said what?
She put on here a minute ago.
I was muted. I unmuted it. So should be good.
Are there any agenda? Discussion changes? All those in favor? Aye. Abstained? All in favor?
Aye.
Abstained? Thank you. Next on our agenda is student recognition for our fantastic.
So we have several recognitions this evening. First of all, we had a milestone from our basketball team. We had a student that had reached over 1,000 points for the first time in female basketball history. I'd like to invite Michaela Walton up. Forward to more points for the next year. Congratulations.
Really proud of you.
So proud of you.
I'm sure Gina wants to.
Yeah. We also have our girls cheer team at high school that has won the state championship again this year. We're so proud of you. Having an opportunity to see you perform over this past year, you do wonderful work. So, congratulations. So we're going to call you up and we're going to group that together. So, Allie.
Thank you.
Madison. Indra.
She's not here tonight.
Samantha. Kate. And Ashley. And Lisa.
She's not here tonight.
And
You recognize this girl?
And Harry. And Danielle. And Marissa. And Eva.
Thank you. I'm here.
Together, groups down here. You're going to show us your folders, right? Your entrance.
Sure, yeah. Yeah, make us on. Oh, I can hear kind of in there. Now you have next week, you have Saturday.
Yeah.
I hear going to Danbury and you're gonna crush it in Danbury.
North Haven, but
Oh,
yeah.
North Haven?
Yeah.
That is George Temple. His rest of the game, they told me they were going to Danbury. Or were you at Danbury last? Oh, George told me that you guys were going to Danbury. But anyway, you do have the competition.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You know how I feel about that.
Yes, yeah. Well, that's one of the greatest arguments.
Oh, I love it.
Yes.
We're gonna do this, we're gonna keep that as a regular agenda item. Yes.
Which need more associations.
Yes. No problem. So when I'm looking, I don't think we have anybody as citizens. George, you want to speak? You're a guest, right? Yes. So I just want to declare. Any board personalities? Yes.
I don't know. If it's a couple, that's a job, and they try to reach us, they go to the invitation and fill out the form.
Right.
To reach us individually, they completely get to us. I'm recommending go back to the original postcard emails that we used to do. People can get out of it. It seems like we're all about transparency all the time, but that seems to make it hinder transparency. We haven't had a problem here.
Well, look.
We haven't had a problem here. I mean, just getting spam.
You know, the other thing is, maybe, and I think we talked about this, I think we should, because generally, even if they email all 8 of us, I'm going to respond. So maybe we should put something down there that.
Or just, if you have a single board, then maybe just such a deal, automatic deal.
Is that work, is that people?
I didn't hear the last.
So we can set up a distribution, like an email box. And when it comes in from the outside to that box, we just, it's an auto forward each of our emails. So we can see it on
Yeah. That's what I set up.
the separate emails.
Yeah, because I mean, it is a key,
Yeah.
you have to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I like that, that
Right,
it's
so
all back to.
so it doesn't feel like we're going backwards and trying to get access to us.
Yeah, yeah. But again, I just want to. Egypt.
So what are the options? And right now, with that section, you can send an email to individual board members. We go a button there that says email to the board, and then they can send that message to that. And it's
That
I like that, yeah.
So you'll talk to Jim tomorrow.
Yeah, we'll divide the group. Have all of them in it.
Yeah, there is a group
Oh,
already.
so,
Yeah,
okay.
we'll do the private one, just it's not.
Anything else? No. So, some reports. The way you have here is it goes.
section change of report, right? And, you go first. So I do want to thank Eve and Rachel for both providing the reports in advance to me last week and enough time that I had a chance to review them, revise them to make some consistency there. And for the weekend. So Eve and Rachel spend between 7 to 10 minutes, give a high level overview of the report, then open up for any questions.
Did you say 7 to 10?
70 to 10.
Thank you for entertaining our reports tonight. This is kind of a first, maybe second go around, because the focus of tonight's reports is going to be our I-rated data. This is the second time we've reported on that data, but it's the first time that we've had comparable data compare the fall to the winter. I just want to thank the Board of Education and Central Office for providing this resource. It's been very well received by students, staff, parents, very user-friendly, very comprehensive. I will touch briefly on some of the other items in the report, and I'm going to try to keep it for 10 minutes or less, but I'm also the one that's going to give you some context to this stuff, so I'm going to borrow Rachel's time, Sylvia's time, Rob's time over the next couple of meetings. So, page number 1 in your report, I'm assuming that you all can view page 1, see things like our enrollment, events and happenings, student activities. There's really nothing monumental to speak to there, other than the fact that when you look at some of those events, you're seeing a return to normalcy with regard to some of the events. There's celebrations, there's social activities, so that's wonderful from a day-to-day standpoint. And I also just want to recognize that the student council on there a number of times. So a shout out to our student council for their hard work. Not on there is things like the food drive and the Spirit Week. So they've really done an excellent job getting back to that normalcy and providing some services not only for our school but for our community. I'm going to skip over strategic priority number 1 because it pairs well with strategic priority number 3, which I'll get to after the I-ready stuff. They're very intertwined and related, and I'm sure you'll understand why when we get there. So let's get into I-ready. When we take a closer look at page 3, a couple of things that I want to say before that is number 1 is it's a new platform. We're learning as we go. We're very impressed. It's having a positive, integrated, comprehensive, and easy to use sense. Our catchphrase, one of our catchphrases at Oxford Center School is concerted effort equals desired results. So one of the things that I hope that we'll come to realize is that there's a lot of things to celebrate here because of the concerted effort that the staff, students, and parents have put into this. But I also want to balance that with the fact that we're always in a culture of continuous improvement and a growth mindset. So we're only 6 months into this thing. We've got ways to go and we're fully utilize it, tip of the iceberg versus entire iceberg. Quick shout out to the students and staff again for their hard work and dedication. And to provide a little context, you'll see the data is organized in a couple of different ways. Number 1 is you're going to see a lot of information that's either whole school data tonight or grade level based data. But you will hear me talk about classroom data, small group data, individualized data. As well. You'll see that it's organized by reading versus math, fall versus winter, and achievement versus growth. So if we take a deeper dive into page 3, you're going to see our whole building data separated at the top with reading data, math data at the bottom. Taking a look at the reading data, you'll see that there's 5 different levels, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 left to right. You'll see that the 2 sets of columns on the right refer to students who are at and above grade level. The 2 sets of columns on the left is data that's students that are at significant intervention levels. Data is separated at the top with reading data, math data at the bottom. Taking a look at the reading data, you'll see that.
Sorry about that.
Yeah.
So you'll hear or you'll read in the report that we talk about at above grade level and its significant intervention. So I just wanted you to have an idea of what I'm talking about with regard to that. You're going to see some bullets with regard to growth data. This is how much students or cohorts of students are growing. You'll see 2 terms there, typical growth and stretch growth. Typical growth is if you took a student at the beginning of the year when they took the diagnostic test and they had a specific score. I'm just going to use a 400 scale score as an example. What typical growth does is it takes the other 100,000 kids across the nation and the average growth that every one of those 400 kids with a 400 scale score becomes the typical growth. So they score 400 at the beginning of the year, the typical growth might be 410. Stretch growth is designed to close gaps, so it's a little bit more aggressive. So if a student is at a level 1 to start the beginning of the year, what it's doing is trying to have that student reach for bigger increments of growth so that they can go from a level 1 to a level 2, from a 2 or 3, 3 or 4, etc. Obviously, if you're starting at a level 1, the amount of time for stretch growth to have its desired impact is a longer period of time than if you're starting at a high level 2, trying to get to a 3. That might be a short, hopefully would be a shorter period of time. So a couple of other comments with regard to growth data. When we parsed out and we looked at students that were receiving special education services or early intervention services, the growth rates were positive and high in the same way that all other students in the building. So there was not a difference in growth rates between students who were receiving services and students who maybe had above grade. The second thing we noticed is that if we look at students who were at level 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, they were all making similar growth rates. There wasn't a discrepancy between kids in different parts of the learning. The third big piece that I'd like to point out is usage. So learning not only has assessment problems, but also has the ability to provide students with activities and learning activities so they can close those gaps. Learning says that students should realize that they're learning pathways, so they can visualize learning pathways. 45 minutes of an active person. You'll see that we learn so this is not a place of instruction that says spend time with strength and practice time with strength. It's an addition to what students are doing activities that are doing as part of the teaching process and interaction with the teacher. It could be part of homework. It could also be part of. So I would say that that's one of the uses. Is
But it's not a standard that every teacher is saying, I want you to do 10 minutes of higher reading, math reading. Maybe it's the kids who need it to kind of shore them up, but it's not something that they're required to do.
Yeah, and there's an independent student element to it as well. If the goal is the students know it was 45 minutes and they had less time in class, maybe more time at home, less time in class. So it's really about bringing awareness to each student should be figuring out how they're going to get to 45 minutes, so whether it's part of the school day or home.
And the teachers have access to how often and how kids are on it, and then also how successful is it something. I noticed in your explanation that you say, this is what it is, geometry that they're going to. So it makes the concept of the child struggling. Must have some kind of have to show understanding.
It not only measures the amount of time, but the accuracy of the work that was done during that period of time. How many successful lessons did they complete? So you can see the results that I just described, the achievement, the growth, and the usage building wide. You can see the reading at the top, the math at the bottom. What I'd like to do next is go to the next page and start talking about some of the data points that are grade level specific. So maybe we use grade 3 as for talking points there. So if we look at grade 3, we can see those bar graphs. Again, there's 5 levels left to right at above grade level. And if we get more specific in there, I've given you a couple of bullets that kind of summarize the achievement. Reading achievement in grade 3, seeing that 78% of our third graders are at above grade level. That's significantly high. Even pre-pandemic, to see 78% of students at above grade level was significant. And you can see that our early intervention, significant intervention, is down to 7% at grade 3. And actually 0% at the lowest level, level 1. You can't see this in the graph, but the growth that's reported is that 47% of our third graders have already met their typical growth. Meaning when they started at that 400 in the fall and they're expecting to get to 410 in the spring, 47% of our kids have already done it. And 15% of our kids have already met their stretch goals. Again, that's a higher standard, but still, 15% of kids already closing the gap. Excellent work. What I wanted to piggyback on Stephanie's point is that if you go down all the way below the domain data, you can see that there's a little notation down there that third grade is going to, they've looked at the data, they've determined that they want to focus on point of view because it's a weaker standard, and they want to use it to reinforce a unit that's currently going on. So they're purposefully saying, we're going to design iReady for this class, for this grade level, to have additional support on that particular standard. Third grade reading overall very strong. Third grade math, area of focus. We're seeing that our achievement levels, that we only have 32% of our students currently at above grade level. 59% of our, lemons lemonade, right? 59% of our students though are within a grade level of being there, as opposed to 2 or 3 grade levels. Good news in math, we have 0% of our students at the lowest level. And our growth rates overall, I would consider to be low because there's only 10% of the students so far making typical growth and 2% meeting stretch growth. Third grade in math, again, deeper dive into the data, have said we'd like to focus on geometry. And there's a different reason for this. This shows you the versatility. In our new math program, pacing in math has always been an issue. You teach all the units of study by the end of the year. You teach all the units of study before you administer the SBAC. Geometry is one of the last units that's taught in third grade, and they're concerned that they're not going to be able to cover it as well as they would like to. So we're using that as kind of like an almost second math topic at this point in time to expose kids to geometry through a combination of iReady and teacher small group instruction. One of the things we can do in iReady is we can pre-test that particular standard. So a teacher can look at their class and say, hey, 3 kids already can demonstrate mastery of geometry. 3 kids are nowhere close. They're 2 grade levels, 3 grade levels below, and a bunch of kids in the middle. So they can push out just geometry to those kids at different levels. They move the kids at grade level, one level of activity. It's a comments, questions on grade 3?
Just trying to imagine, so when you say that they're focusing on geometry, so it's not that iReady is going to be doing geometry, so you're changing your scope and secrets so that you're being taught geometry by the teacher, and then this is also being kind of like supplemented. And the reason I'm trying to wrap my head around it is, years ago, school system.
I remember.
Children could learn through computers. My mother was a reading specialist. They took all the reading specialists and they put them back in the classrooms. They became reading specialists and then put it together. And they found that it doesn't work. So, so this seems kind of like marrying the whole world in person instruction. And you're not just expecting the child to learn from a computer.
That's correct. The teachers are providing correct instruction for the students, and the technology they use common sense and provide supplemental instruction for the students to practice.
I think that's probably why the last scores are low as well. Because I mean, reading the kids read for instruction,
Especially when you take a look at type of initiatives, or and cascade to me that you play about today. It's not the same thing to do about it.
right.
It'll be interesting as we go to 4th and 5th grade to see a little bit of tipping with regard to math instruction, math versus reading. And I do have a couple of hypotheses that I'll share at the end with regard to math versus reading. So let's move on to grade 4. I'm going to use the term respectable when it comes to 4th grade reading achievement because there's 50% of our 4th graders already at above grade level, and we've got a lower number of 8% at intervention. Our growth is strong in grade 4, where we've got 50% of our fourth graders already meeting their typical growth, 25% of them meeting their stretch growth, strong numbers in growth. In fourth grade, again, concerned about getting to a very narrow part of the ELA curriculum, which is poetry. They're going to use I'm Ready to support that. Fourth grade in math, you're going to see that achievement is much stronger there, with 50%, 57% of our kids above an at grade level, 70% in intervention. Our growth numbers, though, are on the lower side in fourth grade. It's an anomaly that, again, we're learning as we go here. The growth numbers right now are 23% at typical growth and 25 at stretch. I don't think that's correct. %50 of students have made their typical growth, and 25%. Okay, yeah, so math, let me make a correction. 23% of students are meeting their typical growth, and only 5% are meeting their stretch growth. So in fourth grade, we've got respectable reading achievement, strong reading growth, strong math achievement, but low math growth. And you're going to see in fourth grade, the same way as in fifth grade, that they're looking to focus on geometry based upon the data.
We did have geometry. What's an example of a third grader? We'll never be ultimate material, all that kind of stuff. And what is a third grader going to do? Now that measurement and that.
And so geometry goes all the way down to pre-kindergarten skills. Can you identify a shape of a rectangle or a circle or a triangle, et cetera? So then things start building on things like angles, et cetera. So specifically in third grade, what they're going to be doing is understanding that shapes can be categorized in different categories, such as rhombuses, rectangles, and others. And that many of those shapes share attributes, i.e. having 4 sides. And that the shared attributes can define a larger category, such as quadrilaterals. Multiple shapes can be in a larger category. As well as recognize rhombuses, rectangles, and squares are examples of quadrilaterals. So there's the example. And they're also going to be asked to draw examples of quadrilaterals that do not belong to any of those categories. So they're starting to experiment with categorizing shapes. They're not, in third grade, they're not to the point of using angles and such to categorize them yet. But if you look at what they're going to be doing in fourth grade and fifth grade geometry, then you're going to see that that's exactly where they're going with it.
So this is shapes.
Right.
It's called geometry, but it's not the same. It's just the most basic level, and then it builds to what you remember.
But it's like area, perimeter, things like that.
That was geometry. You were geometry genius.
Taking a look at fifth grade. We're going to look at the reading achievement. I'm going to describe that as strong, with 63% of our fifth grade students at and above, 7% in intervention. Growth is strong, with 71% of our kids in reading already meeting their typical growth, 28% meeting stretch growth. They are using summarizing and supporting the summary with supporting details, main idea of supporting details. They're looking to use that to reteach and reinforce material that they're currently teaching or already have taught. In math, again, the achievement is strong, 61% of our fifth graders. So go back to that math concept of being low in third grade, but look at what's going on in fifth grade. With regard to 61% of our students are at the above grade level, only 4% are in intervention. Growth is respectable at 47%, typical 12% stretch. And again, we're going to delve into geometry even that much further in fifth grade. I'll give you just a brief description here of geometry in fifth grade. Grade 5 will be using iRated to help students with classifying two-dimensional figures based upon a hierarchy of properties. So is a rectangle a square a rectangle, and what's the hierarchy with regard to how we have to look at those figures. So again, it goes back to classification, but they are delving into things like angles, etc. So any comments on any of the grade level data? So just a couple of things. I kind of wanted to put out there a thought with regard to math versus reading. Number one is with the inception of Connecticut Core State Standards in 2011 and the corresponding SBAC in 2014, the level of rigor in math standards increased significantly and disproportionately to reading. So when the new SBAC came out, we saw math scores go here, and we saw reading scores stay somewhere around here. So it was a disproportionate change, math versus reading. Second, I would put out there, virtual learning was less conducive to rigorous inquiry-based instruction that promotes complex application of multiple skills. We experienced a significant decline in student achievement in math over the past 2 years. It goes back to the point that somebody made. Students were reading on screen, social media every day. They could read as high level or low level as they wanted to or they were exposed to. Students did not have the same experience with math because they were behind the screen. They were not at a small group table with teachers with manipulatives, having conversations, getting feedback, etc. So the learning environment, I believe, impacted that as well. I also think that virtual learning for a younger student versus an older student. So let's just take our third graders, for example. March, when the pandemic hit, they were in the middle of kindergarten. They did not have in-school rich learning environments in math, the same way they had rich learning environments in a virtual environment. Versus our fifth graders who were already in third grade, they were more tech savvy. They could log on, have conversations, and get a better understanding in that virtual environment, perhaps than younger students. The third thing that I would put out there is by nature, math requires a constant introduction of new skills, right? Reading, students have been talking about character setting problems ever since mom and dad have been reading them books from whatever age. In math, students don't start learning about fractions, decimals, etc. until they get to the age appropriate grade level, grade 3, 4, 5, etc. So the difference between spiraling reading skills and scaffolding math skills, I think also has an impact. These bullets are not intended to be excuses. They're provided to shed some light on the challenges that we face and on which we hope to have your partnership and support as we continue to implement a new math program, determine best practices for early intervention and special education supports, and also to allow our math coaches to develop high levels of efficacy amongst our K-5 staff. Again, we thank the Board of Education and Central Office for their support in providing the resources, support, and opportunities needed to provide students with the highest possible quality of education. Stop there for questions.
So I just have a couple of questions. Students one grade level below, before I read it, ever read it? Is there any way to do a comparison? We were prior to I read it. Have I read it right now? But how do we compare I-ready scores to what we reached?
We have not done an analysis of iReady to the STAR data. Because correctional C is SNAC, SNAC. Spring, and we'll be able to compare that to the and that levels.
And also, I think that we I don't know if we do the STAR, or this is probably. Yep. But this is yeah. This is just more of an observation. just aspire to this. This is fantastic, the information that we're getting. But, you know, as I'm looking at this, I'm curious, like, how are the kids doing in writing? How are you know, so at some point, I know that. I mean, could we ever get just kind of a snapshot of, you know, how are the kids doing? How are they doing in social studies? Are there standards, or is there kind of like a common, you know, they should leave third grade knowing this information, they should leave fourth grade knowing this information. So, you know, just in the future, if we can kind of round it out so it's not just reading that.
Right, I mean, we contributed this report because I already did it just now, but the next report is very difficult.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like I said, this is just, you know, and then the other thing that would be great, you know, is I just read the information from other schools, is just kind of get at some point in overarching view of how our kids are doing at the intervention levels. You know, so SRBI, how many kids receive those tiers, and are there kids that come in and are you know, require special education services, as opposed to they just need a little intervention and now they can so, just a snapshot on those other aspects of.
I have one. It's harder to quantify, but it's you know, like to piggyback off what you said, Stephanie, about more data, social emotional state of the students. It's hard to tell off of the test score. I mean, you can look and say, well, if they're doing better in math and they're doing better in reading, then they're probably in a better state of mind at this point in the pandemic than a year or two months ago. But is there any way to kind of start quantifying how they're doing? I know if I ask my kids, I'm told one word answers. That's all I get. Good. Doesn't matter what I'm asked. Yeah, well, it's just whatever. It's not really answers, but it'd be interesting if there was some way to kind of tap into that. I know that there's efforts in the district, but you know, just from the principal's perspective on how the school's doing, do they need more help? Do they need more resources on that area?
Obviously, when it comes to kind of SEL type issues, it's a case by case basis, right? Student, family, other elements. We can quantify it in certain ways, in the sense that we refer students for SRBI or tiered services for social, emotional, behavioral type of learning strategies, as well as executive functioning. How do you become better organized and, with your thoughts and et cetera. So we can quantify the number of students who are receiving those types of services, and we can quantify the number of kids in and out of those types of programs. And I agree with you, those behaviors, those social emotional issues are directly tied to those academic issues, right? So we can look at causal relationships in a loose sense. But again, it's always going to come back to those. There's so much that kind of goes into some of those individual cases that it's not always something you can, if this, then that. If this is the issue, apply this and it fixes the problem. Like a math intervention or PLA. So it's quantifiable, but it's going to be a little bit looser number-wise than some of the other stuff that we're doing. So I'll just briefly touch on strategic priority number 1 and 3. These have to do with feedback. Our teachers have been working very hard with regard to instructional strategies, trying to improve their craft. Not that it was broken, but we recognize that instructional strategies are just as much a part of teaching and learning as readers and writers workshop and illustrative math, et cetera. So they're working on improving their craft with regard to learning targets, success criteria, self-assessment, teacher to student feedback, rich classroom discussion, and higher order thinking. Administratively, we're working with our peers as well as Patrick Flynn to become better givers of feedback. And we're going in and sharing information with regard to what we see as far as the environment, whether there's an established purpose for learning, a process for learning, and whether there's an evident understanding of learning. and then providing feedback to teachers with regard to what's going well in classrooms. And we're working on the other part, which is those I wonder statements, those statements say, hey, have we thought about this? Have we talked about this collaboratively? It's all, again, underneath that umbrella of continuous improvement. We finished our second set of trend setting walkthroughs late February. Tomorrow morning, I'm going to be sharing with staff the results of those. We're also doing non-evaluative walkthroughs, which is where we're providing those positive affirmations, trying to grow the positive culture around this. And we're also using these approaches in our formal TVA system. The other part that I would touch on is going back to Mike's question, social emotional learning. We're continuing to roll out and utilize Ruler through class meetings, using class charters, mood meters, meta moments, and we're trying to integrate SEL, literature, and web-based resources into things like our ELA curriculum. So that's just to touch base on a couple of the other strategic priorities. But tonight, again, the focus is really on the iReady data, and I'm sure we'll have conversations about the request for broader data sets.
Just a quick question on 1 or 3. Well, so far, how you think, what's the target for your school having non-graded walkthroughs?
I guess the best way to answer that is, this has been a learn as we grow process. So the expectation is that we would do 2 sets of trend setting walkthroughs, which basically would be a group of folks would walk into every single classroom in a given time frame. We've completed both of those trend setting walkthroughs. We're in the process of completing for everyone our first batch of non-evaluative walkthroughs, where you spend a little bit more time, you give written feedback. And as of course, with the third bucket, the TVAL, the formal evaluation stuff, that's all on track with regard to the timeline set by the state.
So everything evaluation says how.
And every teacher, last year, the teacher evaluation was all by state pandemic. This year, it's back on the regular schedule. So the report is the state rating for every certified staff member. And that from the teacher evaluation process. And it's the beginning of the year, mid-year, and year meetings, traditional observations of teachers.
I just say, just as a comment that we were all concerned about, gaps in the kids' concerned about closing those gaps. And, I know that the kids are resilient, and I think private schools, they seem to be doing a great job. And they're closing the gap, and I just the social emotional that'll come as well. But it just seems like they're doing better than we anticipated. Just think that's happening.
Again, I can't say enough about the student, staff, and parents that I get to work with on a daily basis. I'm very proud of the work that they've done. I'm pleased with the progress. Again, it's only 6 weeks in, 6 months in, and we're always in the right set of results. Yes, thank you. Not as concise, not as eloquent, not as comprehensive.
We know.
You took my entire 70.
Now you know how it feels.
See, and that's good because you did a great job. So honestly, pretty much. I won't go into all of those very specific details, but you did a wonderful job. Just looking at our enrollment, we are up 11 students. We're very excited that we're getting triplets on Thursday. So super excited about that. Actually, when this was done, we actually had 2 new students enrolled last week. So our enrollment is going up. The month of moving. Students moving in, but we're staying our triplets on Thursday.
Where are they going?
Sorry, grade, first grade. They're actually just.
I'm tapped out. I just got a new one.
This is their tool, yeah, at max capacity right now. Yeah. And don't be a children. That's true. That is true. So we're very excited. There are several who we've had the most movement that I think we've had a month times here. So lots of respect. As he mentioned, the events and happenings at Cape Farm, you can just get this sense of normalcy coming back. I do have to comment on the Monday, when we had no masks. The kids came off the bus. It almost brought me to tears, just because they got off the bus and their comments were just. This is the case. And I think that they just need to remember that we have almost 400 kids. Oh, sorry. We have almost 400 kids, and not one of those students has ever had a normal school year. So when you look at it in that capacity, that Monday when those kiddos got off the bus, it was a big deal. And I think it was a really big deal to staff too. And staff were very emotional because we haven't seen these kids' faces, and they've never seen my face, because when I would go into the cafeteria, I might see theirs, but they've never seen mine. So it was just very emotional for the staff, and for the students. They were thrilled. Like, it was just amazing to see. So we have seen a difference just with the masks coming off. They're just so excited. I find that they're more talkative. Some classroom teachers have noted that, wow, they were definitely more talkative. Yes. Which is great to see. So just wanted to add that in there. But again, our events and happenings, we're very much looking forward to our reading week, which is coming up. We're actually going to have our first auditorium presentation by an outside person coming in. Al DeCant has been at Quaker Farms many times. So he's going to be doing 3 different assemblies. So that's going to be super great, because again, these children have never had an assembly before. So I really think it's going to be an awesome week. So we're looking forward to that. Next week, we're reinstating our Pledge of Allegiance. We're going to have classrooms come down with kiddos. We haven't done that in 2 years. So that's going to be super exciting for our friends in 1st and 2nd grade to actually join that. So I just think it's really important to note that, because we can talk about iReady scores, but when you're looking at a 4, 5, 6, 7-year-old, there's so much more to iReady. So I know Keith did a great job of explaining all that, but I just think it's also important to talk about those other pieces that really impact kiddos. A test is a test, and it's one data point. There's just so much more that goes into every day at Quaker Farms. The students and staff are working super hard. I've been here for 24 years, and the staff at Quaker are just exemplary. They're working super hard, and they put a lot of pressure on themselves. And I just want to sincerely thank them for all of their hard work and dedication. And when we look at the iReady scores, they're all going up in the areas that need to go up, and they're all going down in the areas that need to go down. So when you kind of look at that, I'm very pleased, and I was excited to share with Dr. Miller when he was at Quaker Farms. That was the day I was actually doing the data, and I was like, look at these numbers, these are great. It was just really exciting for me to see. Please remember that kindergarten, this is their first data point, so you're only going to see, there's no comparison data. So it's looking like the October data that you saw for 1st and 2nd grade. This is our kindergarten data. And looking at it, it's nothing that's surprising to us. Actually, we thought it was actually better than we had anticipated. Again, these kiddos are on their Chromebooks. They are using a touch screen, which is great, but in our tech lab, the computers in the tech lab are with a mouse. So when I was observing in the tech lab just last week, the kiddos are still trying to touch the computer screen, yet the Chromebook is touch screen, yet the computer lab is with a mouse. So again, I just think it's just new for them. So, and again, kids were going through them very, very quickly. It was their first time taking this test. And certainly now that they've had experience, we're now looking at having the children use their pathways and using it during class time, during center time as well. The breakdown for reading and math, I'm not going to go into each one, but again, it looks like the data that was presented for 1st and 2nd grade in October. Some of the areas I did meet with both the math coach and the reading specialist, and we have identified areas in kindergarten for reading. Looking at the scores across kindergarten, one of the areas was that kiddos had a difficult time where endings and suffixes and prefixes like ed, s, re, on, pre, full, less. Those are some really difficult areas that the kiddos scored a little bit lower in. So our kindergarten teachers are working on that in the area of reading. In the area of math, again, no surprise to us. We kind of figured that these were where the kiddos were going to fall. The area that was the weakest area was solving addition and subtraction word problems. Again, we haven't really touched upon subtraction yet, so that obviously would be an area of weakness in regards to groupings of 10. Any questions about the kindergarten? We don't have any comparison data. It's pretty much self-explanatory. Grade 1 reading. Again, looking at our numbers, they really went up in the areas that we wanted them to. Mid or above grade level, 44% of our students are demonstrating that they're achieving at or above grade level. This is up from 19% from the fall, so for us, that was a significant increase. 1% of students are performing at a significant intervention level, and that was down from 2%. 24% of our students are at their typical growth, and 9% of our students have met our stretch growth. Looking at each domain, that's really specific. Looking at phonemic awareness, again, mid or above, from fall, we were at 31, now we're up to 50%. Phonics is down to 8, now it's up to 32. High frequency words, if you walk into a classroom, teachers are constantly doing high frequency words. We're up from 27 to 58%, that's a great improvement. Vocabulary is up, literature, informational text is up. So all the areas that we want to see increase had increased. And then the 1 grade level, 2 grade levels below, those have all decreased, which is great. In the area of math, pretty much, again, the same. 32% of students demonstrating that they're achieving at or above. This is up from 20% of students in the fall, which is great. 4% of students are performing at significant intervention levels. This is down from 7 in the fall. And 21% of our students have met their activity or typical growth, while 5% have met that stretch growth. Our first grade area that we found after working with our math coach, he's specifically going into classrooms working on using addition and subtraction within 20 to solve word problems. Word problems, for as long as I can remember, word problems in both grades 1 and 2 have been very, very difficult for kiddos, because it also takes that reading piece too. So if a child is struggling with reading, you know that they're going to struggle with that word problem piece. So really focusing in on word problems is something that grade 1 is focusing on. Any questions on grade 1? Grade 2, 51% of students are demonstrating that they're achieving at or above grade level. This was up from 39% in the fall. 3% of our students are at the intervention level. This is down from 12% in the fall. 29% of our students have met their typical growth goal, and 12% are at the stretch growth. The area of weakness was to describe sequencing between a series of events in the story. So again, reading and being able to understand and comprehend the sequence of the story is something that we're working on. In regards to 44% of our students are demonstrating that they're achieving at or above grade level. This is up from 21%. 6% of our students are performing at significant intervention levels. This is down to 13. 10% have met the typical growth, while 2% have met that stretch growth. And again, second grade is also working on addition and subtraction within 100 to solve problems, both 1 and 2 step word problems. And again, that's very common. It's not something that's different. Any questions on grade 2 data? And I think one of the important things is to note is that our math coach is really working on looking at the aggregate results. And when he goes in daily to different classrooms, it's really picking groups that the classroom teachers will say, I have a group of kiddos based on some high writing information, or based on classroom observations, or based on something that they're seeing in the class that they really need to work on. So our math coach has really done a wonderful job at going into classrooms, asking teachers what they need, asking for groups of kiddos, what specific areas can you work on? You don't see this direction there. In the classroom assisting, you might be pulling out students into the hallway to work on various activities, but really focusing on some of these core concepts.
To just piggyback on that,
Yes.
I think that, just in the back of your head, that would be great information for to have, just to see the success that the math coach has. Because, those are the things that those positions, when they're asked for, if we have an understanding of, this is an example of baseline data, math coach intervention, and then the exit data, shortened data. So, that's cool. You have that information anyway, so that's just stuff that, for other not typical staff, that's just great for us to just hear. And it doesn't even have to be a presentation. It should just be something that, part of your newsletter. Sure.
And I know Mr. Richmond, he loves to talk, so I'm sure he'd love to come and share with you guys, because he does give the schedule every Monday morning. The classroom teachers receive a schedule as to where it's going to be, what's specifically planned. Classroom teachers know when it's coming. So it's very, very busy.
Yeah.
And the teachers do appreciate these assistants as well. And I do feel that's benefiting our kiddos as well. Any questions? It took up all my time. No.
Anybody have any questions for Rachel? Good job.
Dr. Miller requests I go second all the time.
Thank you.
You guys are, I don't think there's anything else that needs to be here for, so you guys are welcome to say goodbye to your friend crowd.
Thank you. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. next on our agenda is the school calendar. Is that in the calendar? I know you handed it, but it's in here.
It's in Word docs. The calendar is very, very similar to what this current academic school year is. There were two changes that we made to it. One, we moved the early release dates for the conferences from the 22nd and the 23rd to the 1st and the 2nd of March. We did that because those early release dates for parents, the conferences took place the same week of no school on Monday and Tuesday. That made the kids, because nothing that came back and then 2.5 days. It turned out that Friday was a no school from Scout. But it made sense to move that to a regular academic week and have the students return to have a semblance of a normal 3 days, Wednesday through Friday. In talking with the principals of those two schools, they both felt that was an appropriate transition. That was the change that we made to the calendar from this school year to next. To the rest of it is pretty much in alignment with what we expect.
Do you want to bring up the question that I asked you and to talk about the agenda? Cities and cities.
Yes, I explained to the principal that what happens is.
Well, let me just tell you my question.
Right, yes.
So when we looked at this, I said, you know, I know we're going back, but I've never been. Saturday, like, what's the reason for that thing? Yeah, so you take the test in the morning, then you go to school in the afternoon, like, why do we have this way of instruction?
In tradition, and I spoke to Rob about that, because almost every high school in the state of Connecticut does it the same way. Just that after testing for several hours at the high school level, the students are just, and it's just a feeling.
You must have been a tougher generation, right? Then we can take those tests and get right back into class. But I would test them, but, okay. So then they should be well rested and they should see fantastic results.
I would have done a lot better by that.
Thank you, Robert, for checking into that. Does anybody have any questions about this calendar? Or like, say, right, because we're not. There's one calendar that started much earlier, before Labor Day.
Why this happens starting on Wednesday, because that means working parents. So we don't pay for that for those. Right, usually 2 weeks before. So we're talking about policy and that parents need to try coverage.
So this works, this starts on Monday?
No,
Oh, it does. What's the 29th and 30th? Oh, I see.
like professional travel. I just think there's no way around it. It's just a tough position.
Yeah.
I guess my thing is I would love something to go with leader into the summer. That's usually I have to take up the summer.
Right. I mean, is there something that can we bring this to Parks and Rec and see if there's something that we can provide?
Absolutely. Now that we have this facility here, we can make this space available for Park Rec and Socket to run programming. Typically, you make it schools towards the end so that the facilities department can get the schools ready for school. But if we've got the space here, we can say, come here, use this as a summer, make it available. Yeah. So we sure have that. We'll have that conversation with Parks and Rec.
I'll take that conversation.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. And I think we can have that conversation and start planning for that.
I think they're very appreciative.
How does it sound? Cool. Well, we're not there yet.
But at least it's a plan, and it's just a discussion of our diversity. And we've just learned that we have to put things in that safe, like who's going to follow through, and blah, 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 because we have it and we all need it. So, Anthony, that's on you. You're on it.
Put it on the list, right?
So, is this something that we need a motion to accept the calendar or?
Yes, should have it.
Motion to approve this.
calendar for the year 2020. 2022.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? Those abstained? Afternoon, report. We are going to.
That'd be very good. So, he spoke about 10 walkthroughs. We've done it twice now. And it's a team of administrators and instructional coaches that goes through and basically does a sweep of almost every single classroom in the building. We spend about 10 to 12 minutes in each classroom. There's a set of data points that we're capturing. The first time through, administrators review the data. This time we made a concerted effort to model with the initiative team last Wednesday the protocol that they are expected to use tomorrow with their faculties. And then the whole point is for the teachers to immerse themselves in the data, analyze the data through a set of questions and interpretations, and have them arrive at an aha moment of what's this data really telling us, what's the area of focus that we as this whole school should be working on, either through text-based seminars, through observing each other's classrooms, conversations we should be having, learning. What is it we need to grow as a faculty? And then we should see evidence of that growth the next time through and the next time down. But the idea is for the teachers to really internalize and understand what it is that we're seeing through the process and have them make meaning of that data so that they can make some real internalization of as a faculty, what is the work that we need to do. We're engaged in that. All 4 schools are scheduled, assuming we've got the other part in the back school to have faculty meetings with the 4 school or after school. I want to spend a couple minutes talking about one of our bigger bar teachers. Kristen Cook is a bar teacher. She recognized last month that one of her students was having difficulty keeping her eyes straight on reading and writing, and just was not able to focus on the paper in front of her in the way that she was earlier in the year. So she actually contacted the parents and said, "This is what I'm noticing. I have concerns about this." That parent then took their daughter to the doctor. Turned out that daughter had a tumor. So the work of this teacher in noticing and being that observant that this child was changed. There was something significantly different from earlier years now. Might have saved this one time. So this teacher is a very labs, and I just wanted to publicly recognize her for the work that she did for that. A significant road ahead. There needs to be some sort of fundraiser or something for them later in the spring to see what we can do.
Sure. Please let us know.
Yes.
You just took
Athletically, yeah, okay, sorry, Steve, it's athletically, it was a wonderful weekend. We celebrated the girls here, the performance on Saturday. Our girls basketball didn't make it to playoff, they played Friday night. Unfortunately, there's a few late calls at the game. But they were at a point, so they didn't get to the playoff game. I don't know the score, but right now the boys basketball team is in the country. But right now, the basketball. Morning. The plan is is to move our special education supervisor to the current director of special education will post immediately for the position. The thinking if we have a start date of July 1, we'll open up the candidates to broader pools, for the year, doesn't want to be split as we can go at the end of the school year. But July 1 start date, we'll more have to get something that's willing to be kind of in that middle of the 23 period. So that's the timing that we do, but we do want to get that posting out, maybe to start that day.
Do you have an end date for the posting?
What was that?
Do you have an end date for the posting, or are you just going to see what?
We'll probably have a 2 to 3 week end date, probably maybe around first week of April and see.
So I would just say to the people who are part of that. Process, so it sounds like we'll be getting starting the process somewhere.
Yes, yeah. My hope would be to have a candidate present to the board as finalist on mid-May, so that candidate can get a long time notification to.
And we usually do 3 board members on the interview.
Yeah, so it is.
All right, so
We'll define the process for that.
does somebody else, we have some negotiations that are coming up too, so.
Yeah, there's 2
Wrap it
negotiations.
up.
Yeah, there's 2 pools of negotiations that we need to do.
Any place for how this is going to impact people, Susan?
It shouldn't. The biggest impact is that when we spend time talking about the scheduling, it's less PTs and more the evaluation. So the evaluations, that's another administration pitch in and help evaluate some special staff itself. But it wasn't part of it.
The annuals in our district are under the end of the year all at once. We have to do it throughout the year, so it won't be like as it could have been.
Right. The other area that might have some impact is that our supervisor, Linda, currently does some hours. Yeah, some hours in high school, which you might not go cover that. Yeah,
Doing that all year,
for the better part, or at least that.
and that's because we don't have a speech.
We do have some advice to just providing some assistance.
Because of the volume.
Volume and this is the best interest of students. And finally, we can ask my town hall to have the training flag outside of our building here on the flagpole. Where several person has requested that, so we're waiting to get that flag if you hear about that, it is a request made by the first selectman. Tomorrow night, we have the meeting back next to the virtual to the board of governance.
6 p.m. town.
6 p.m. town hall.
I don't have any. So our subcommittees, jail facilities, you were done, right, Rob?
Thank you.
We discussed the phase for the Wonderland project. Sure. We received 2 bids. They were both responsible. We decided to go with the lowest responsible bid for this project. Came in at $68,900.
Just speak up a little bit.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, so we're going to go with the lowest responsible bid of $68,900. That is going to come out of our central activities fund. We didn't actually formally discuss with the finance, that's the word I was looking for, subcommittee. So we're going to end up holding a finance subcommittee just to get the kind of formal approval to spend that out of the central activities fund under athletics, which we have plenty of money to cover that. And we also have money to cover should they run into extra lead And then there's part of the bid process is X amount of dollars after 50, some cubic yards of this. So we have money to cover. The process was set up so that it is future proof. So should we want future proof, so we the size of the pipes and whatnot. So should the town say, or we say, we'd like to build restrooms, we could do that, and maybe perhaps do a capital plan in the future. But we wouldn't have to re-dig and put bigger pipes and things like that. So it seems like it's going to meet our immediate needs and allow for future opportunities should we want to do that.
Right. And this bid does the getting the water to the spot there, it doesn't do anything in terms of the ice machine and the other work that needs to be done once we get water there. So this is step one. And then we got to add.
Going to the building, that's the snack shop, or whatever.
Yes.
Which means that, they would have water bill would happen.
So what needs to happen is
If you go into the backside. To the back, with the hosted connection to the water, and install an ice machine. So those would be some
additional.
additional charges.
That's not part of the bid itself.
Reasonable response. Right.
So by board policy, we've gone to bid with board, we did need to approve the bid result and allow us to award the bid to the recommendation of the study committee. Now we're here.
We're going to wait till you have a facility. Finance.
You can, the board can approve the bid, we can award the bid, and then the finance committee can approve the use of funds.
Then I just have a general question, in the presentation there, so for this meeting, we were talking about something where, is that kind of a finance package, and you said that it takes you out of that, you take the lowest bid, and the lowest bid, doesn't necessarily lead to the best product as we see. So I it's kind of.
There are various consortiums out there that basically say, we're going to do the work for you, we're going to recipe detail the pricing, and we're going to give you a best price guarantee per se. There's several different consortiums, some are regional, some are national, and some of those that I haven't used that before, and they brought forward these other ones, but it allows towns and school districts to bypass the typical bidding process. I'm not necessarily in favor of bypassing the bidding process. I think that is.
I just don't like having to take the lowest bid.
Right, and you don't have to, the way that you do a bid, you decide the way that you have a better qualities that you're looking for. And price is one of those, but also you're looking at quality of work, you're looking at references, you're looking at have they work even in another school district. So you establish what the bid, and you review all that. Price isn't necessarily the only.
And you feel comfortable with how you set the bid out and what you got in, that we're getting quality for a good
Yeah,
price.
for this, the question, it came in higher than we anticipated, to be honest with you. So, so we wrestled with the issue of, well, if we did nothing, well, obviously they don't have the water, but will the price go down? And I don't think it's going to. So it's like, might as well, I just purchased oil today for my home and I almost fell out over it. All right. So I think this is going to be the best price we're going to get. It provide us with our immediate needs and still allow for, should in the future we say we want to build a restroom. Well, then we could put that, as we revise our capital plan, say next year, we could put that in and then give it to the town.
I think it's really important that we move forward on this because it's been discussed for years. Not anything new that, has been a desire and need. And we just, we have kids safety. So I would support the question. Anyone else comments? Motion to approve this. Motion to approve for $68,900 for the one. Do I need to include it?
Would you say pending? Finance committee?
And a finance committee approval. of funds.
Is that, do we need to say who or where the bids here?
I think so.
Earthworks Excavating and Landscaping Inc. I can give you the
Oh,
name.
that's, it's in Oxford, right?
Yeah,
That's
they're-
Oskowski.
Yes.
Both is for Oxford.
Yeah.
Okay, so motion to approve bid for earthworks, whatever, $68,900 for the water line project and finance of the.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. But make sure you get the yada yada.
Got it. I actually really wrote that in. Yeah, I highlighted it.
Yeah.
We get it from that.
Oh, I'm sorry.
We did also talk about the application. Obviously, the numbers that give us scope of what they're looking at being a little higher than we talked about, but it's still in the project in the sense that it takes care of our needs, provides the instruction for the school, for the environment as possible. And the numbers they come up with, of course,
It was here, yeah.
Comparing apples, what the regular building community is recommending for what's new, still it's.
It was a great presentation.
Start. How would we start?
That is a question, that's a question of funding for the town.
And then also getting, we talked about.
Engineering.
Yeah, well, but everything the engineer, but also just getting.
What should
Well, it's good part. They're pretty much getting out of what's the perceive that. To get as possible. So unlike option B, we're breaking the whole thing. That's not the case. It's moved on.
all for the building
Still
side?
It would be summer, could be, you know, they said that there's possibilities of it's even third of weeks break.
Of one pot, and then they do nothing.
Right.
Probably this will work this summer.
It depends on funding from the town. If it's not- Right.
So, what if there was equipment, we could find out if there is inventory distributors around that could be leveraged against the town, saying, look, we've got to do that. It's not right now.
Right, it's forwarded us also some information by hunting sources out there for the government. So this will feed into that. It is about each of these schools. We take basically the next day for that.
Just so that the clarify. Everything that is proposed are the grade open. Obviously, grade open, the school building for. This system also gets all the quality issues. Possible mitigation of resources, but also. So, compared to apples to apples, that I feel.
And not only does this project address Great Oak, but this is also the same units that we put into the park, and also has the same type of failing equipment in our council.
Curriculum, you're having a meeting on Tuesday.
I do need to talk to afterwards, to talk to everybody to move that.
All right, so we had a second reading that was before by the curriculum committee. One that we have is very sparse. It's really just the first paragraph, and the last paragraph. The language that's in it. Second reading, so they're running. Bylaws ready. No questions, so. So move that should be your motion is. Approval of the standing committee bylaws. Now, does this have, is this in a series? Is this? So it's bylaws, so whatever that series is. So it'll go into, I didn't know we need to say in the series. All right, so second.
Second.
Mike, any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed, or abstained? So I guess we'll just put that C. Abstain. Is that all right to do that, to abstain for someone who's not here? Because he's not there? Or just don't put his name, no, okay, so not abstain.
And we actually have been looking to see if Shelley's been voting.
Just don't put his name. I'm
We
sorry.
haven't been looking to see if Shelley's been voting.
Oh, well, she usually texts me if she's,
I haven't seen it in
So,
person.
yeah. And Mike,
I'd say the only news we have is that we are presenting to the Board of Finance tomorrow, hopefully, when they're pending. And then after that, we're gonna have to follow up to discuss the water project. It'll probably be very quick. We might do an impromptu, just to make sure we don't hold up the process.
thank you. Thanks for everything. For liaison reports, this is that, they had the freshman panel, it was well attended, and I'm supporting Oasis and that working together. Just from what I've read, it was, again, it was well attended because it was had to attend, but still, I think it was a great opportunity for the kids to have exposure to, especially the personal testimony. So, I think that's the stuff that they see up here and they hear what they. So, I think it was a great program.
It was such a powerful program, and I encourage but it this Friday it goes to higher student bodies of all kinds of schools. And I also sent it out to all district staff if they had anything.
Any of the days? SOP. Now, is that on target? I mean, I thought, I know there's an end of March target for something, I'm not sure.
Right. The goal was to have by the end of March, a preliminary draft of our series of actions, our priorities, and our SMART goal related to our series of actions. And then develop a plan this month on how we would gather stakeholder feedback on the work that's been done. And that would then lead into April and May, building actual action plan that would go on each of the three stars.
So we would expect to kind of have a completed SOP by the end of the year.
Yes, that's the goal. So we are exactly right on pace as the year we expect to be right now. Booster Club is scheduled to meet tomorrow night.
So at this point, I would make a motion to adjourn at 7:56. All those in favor? Have a nice night. Thank you. And I don't know if you want to talk about this.
I did.